What's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, Breon Ansley posting a posing video update at 5 weeks out from the Arnold Classic, where I've got to admit, he's looking pretty impressive for a guy that's 42 years old. Now, it's worth noting here that statistically, Breon and Terrence Ruffin are the best two guys in this lineup. Breon won the 2018 Arnold Classic, making him the only other former Arnold Classic champion in this lineup, and the only two-time Mr. Olympia champion, or Olympia champion at all, in this lineup. Alex Combernero, a former Arnold Classic Physique champion, not in this lineup. Ruff Diesel is the only other Arnold Classic Physique champion here. Now, at the Olympia, Ruff Diesel has beaten Breon 2 years in a row now. On the scorecards at last year's Olympia, Breon had a final score of 18 and a placing of third, and Terrence had a final score of 10 and a placing of second. So a pretty good-sized gap between the two. I wouldn't say it was close. But looking at this posing update and how impressive Breon looks here, is it possible that Breon is able to close that gap between him and Terrence and possibly dethrone Terrence, who is the defending champion here? Or will it be a newcomer like Urs Kalsinski, like Ramon Dino? Now, my gut feeling is that this is going to be the year of the newcomers across the board in Classic Physique and Men's Open Bodybuilding. I think you're going to see a lot of these newer, younger guys placing way higher this year and pushing back some of the old guard and placing ahead of them. However, looking at this, Breon is not going to make it easy for these new guys like Ramon, like Urs. Breon wants to prove he's still in that conversation. And again, looking at this update, it looks like he might be able to do that. Can he push Terrence? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Or do you think the Breon era is over and this is the new era of these younger, newer guys like Terrence, like Ramon, like Urs? Let me know. Now, next up in the news, I wanted to share this with you guys. There is a George the Bull Peterson Scholarship Foundation, which looks like this is being managed by his sister, Renee. Now, she posted this on Instagram, and she says in the description here that if you purchase a the Bull mask and or hat, that 75% of the proceeds from those sales will go to fund higher education scholarships for students in the Southeast Queens community. There's a link in her bio to do that. I'm also going to share that link in the description box of this video. Or you can also flat out make a donation to that foundation. If you don't want to donate, you don't like these types of things, that's fine. But if you do, I just wanted to share this with you, and it'll be done in the memory of George the Bull Peterson. May he rest in peace. I think this is a great idea, and it's going to help to let his legacy, live on even further. Now, next up in the news, Rafael Brandao, Brazilian's favorite bodybuilder, is confirmed to be out of the Arnold Classic. He posted a video on YouTube yesterday explaining it, and it has since been confirmed by the Arnold Classic themselves that he is not doing it. Now, he says in the video, and this is a rough translation from a fan of mine, that he is only doing the Arnold Classic Brazil and then focusing on the Mr. Olympia instead of this Arnold Classic. He also says that he really wants to compete in Brazil because of the amazing public, family, and sponsor support that he has there. So it could be related to the extra stress of having to travel to the States from Brazil to the Arnold. But ultimately, he says after losing the Arnold Classic in Brazil in 2019, this became like his biggest goal in bodybuilding was to win that Arnold Classic Brazil because it's such a close show to his heart. That's his home country. Now, I also know there might have been a little bit of back and forth between him and his coach, Chris Aceto. And I also know that there might have been a little bit of a disagreement between him and Ramon Dino, who is doing the Arnold Classic in Classic Physique. But essentially, my understanding is the brand that sponsors Rafael Brandao essentially tried to buy Ramon Dino from another brand, try to convert him to their company. So my understanding is there was some kind of drama between the current sponsor of Rafael Brandao and then the old sponsor of Ramon Dino. And this was pretty recent too. This was like a couple of weeks ago, so I don't know if that had any bearing on his decision not to come to Ohio and compete. And I think it's pretty unfortunate we don't get to see Rafael in this lineup because I think it would have added definitely an extra element of excitement. But unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be the last name to pull back from that list. I think there's some other, I've heard that there's some other international guys that might not be competing that are still on the list. So time will tell if we see more names drop. But I definitely wish the best to Rafael. And speaking of the Arnold Classic, now a word from our sponsors over at the Arnold Classic.
I think that every bodybuilder has something unique, especially the bodybuilders today. I mean, wow. They are big.
Now, next up in the news, let's talk about another guy that's doing the Arnold Classic. Max Charles posting a physique update at 5 weeks out. He is another name on this list. We've talked a lot about some of the lesser hyped guys like Brett Wilkin, like Steve Kuklo, like Rafael Brandao, like Justin Rodriguez. But we haven't really mentioned much of Max Charles. And Max Charles is a guy that in this lineup I think could also be a little bit of a wild card, because one of the things that Max is known for, crazy razor-sharp conditioning. Now, he does have a little bit of that weak point with his lower body, which I think he's done a good job of improving in recent years, and I would say his back might be a little bit of a weak point for him as well, but the conditioning seems to be very consistent. He's proven in the past that he can beat potentially better bodybuilders, more complete bodybuilders, when they come in off and he comes in on. So that's what makes this lineup a little bit difficult to try to nail down in a prediction video, which, stay tuned, subscribe. I'm going to give my Arnold Classic predictions about a month out. But oftentimes, and this is the case with this year, the Arnold Classic becomes a show where there's a lot of guys that could easily sneak into that top 6. The Olympia is a little bit more, the best of the best are there, so some of the guys that you're used to seeing in the top 6 are often in the top 6 from year to year. But I think with the Arnold Classic, there's more wiggle room for that top 6 to shift and change, because some of the guys might come in off. Some of the guys are lesser known. Some of the guys are newer. Some of the guys are invited, so haven't won shows yet. It's just a bit of a different dynamic there, and I think that's what makes the Arnold Classic a fun show. But Max is looking to be on track. He's looking to be on point. He's looking to, potentially bring that trademark conditioning again. So be on the lookout for him at this show. And I'll also show you, since the other Brazilian guy is out, Rafael Brandao, another Brazilian bodybuilder in this lineup, Fabio Giga Rezende. He is the winner of last year's Arnold Classic Amateur. This was his latest physique update. Now, this was about a week ago, but he is going to be the newcomer in this lineup, the ultimate newcomer, because he got here off the merit of winning the amateur and turning pro there. And since we have literally no idea how he would look in comparison to any of these guys, because we've never seen him on stage with any of them yet, he's a bit of a wild card in and of himself, because we have no idea how he's going to look on stage next to these guys. He could look phenomenal. Now, I also want to take a more comprehensive look here at Cedric McMillan. So, in addition to the back pose that we got to see from him a few days ago, his sponsor, Black Skull USA, they also posted the front and the side from that same video, it looks like. So this was more around the 6 week out, 5 to 6 week out mark from the Arnold. And it just gives you a little bit more of a complete picture of how Cedric is looking from the front, from the back, and from the sides. Now, my opinion on this, I think his upper body is still very much the typical Cedric McMillan that we're pretty much used to seeing. The only real criticism I have is, to me, his legs do look downsized. And I've said this before, but with age, the legs usually seems to be the first thing to go, especially the size aspect of the legs. Now, it's important to keep in mind here, Cedric is in his mid-40s. He's 44. And he's been competing for a long time, and bodybuilding is definitely a sport where it's a sprint, not a marathon. A pro bodybuilding lifespan, as far as your career, is really pretty short, and Cedric has been competing as a pro for over a decade. I think 12, 13 years. I believe his first show was in 2010. First pro show. So I think this show is going to be a pretty pivotal one for Cedric's career. I mean, he's kind of been on a downward trajectory in terms of actual placings, and we haven't seen him compete since Legion. We've been over this. We haven't seen him finish a show since the 2020 Arnold, which he took 6th. And I would imagine that if Cedric is outside of the top 6 at this Arnold Classic, it would have to be a big consideration and maybe a big contributing factor to maybe the decision of retiring. And I could be wrong here. Cedric's placings might improve dramatically from here on out. He might continue to compete and do really well, but they might not. And he might continue to place, lower and lower. And if that is the case, then the question becomes, how much longer, is this worth it for him to compete? When is the right time to step away? When is the right time to retire? Again, mid-40s is a pretty outlier of an age for a pro bodybuilder. A lot of the pros are in their late 20s, early 30s. I would say the majority are somewhere in that range. Competitive pros competing into their 40s at the top shows like the Arnold and the Olympia, that is an outlier. It's not common. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Am I way wrong and Cedric has another half a decade or more competing just like Dexter Jackson? Or do you think his career is on, the tail end right now? Let me know down below. And that's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Make sure you leave a like on this video. It helps out a lot. Very important. So thumbs up the video if you liked it. Make sure you subscribe. Hit that bell notification icon so you're notified every time I post a video. As always, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out.